Hello and welcome to the A. Marie Speaks podcast, where I am talking about all things introspection, spirituality, and happiness. Thanks so much for joining me here. Today it is Tuesday, November 14th, 2023, and this will be episode 39. I am excited to dive into this idea or visualization, I guess, of the ascension or evolution of information. And I am bringing this sort of guide up as a resource and a reminder for myself, but also for anybody out there who is interested, of course, who may be following along with the Energetic System series, which is offered over on the video platforms like YouTube and BitChute. I've been diving into the workings of systems over there and really exploring how energy is transacted in these sort of exchanges of systems, and that is and has and will continue to provide such beautiful working and new discoveries for me. However, what sort of a side avenue or side vein of this has really drawn me to look at what exactly is energy. Hold on. Okay, yes, it's energetic transactions. I see that. And also, yeah, they have a charge and a polarity. There's a life and a consciousness to energy. There's a flow, and in this unspeakable, untangible portion of energy as well. But what is it really, right? And I had touched on this quite a while ago. I did a podcast and I wrote a blog about the down-to-earth approach of love and light, sort of metaphysical parallels between the concepts of light, what it is as light as information, light as wisdom, ultimate knowledge, the great logos, and love being, the bond that holds all together, the glue, the great magnetism, that beautiful ultimate support of the feminine, the availability of the space, and the calling togetherness. And both of those working in conjunction together gives a much deeper understanding of what love and light really are. It's not like a fluffy feel-good glitter that's just there, the superficial makeup. There's a real quality to it, a deep depth there. And this understanding now, to bring it into systems and to remember that all systems at all levels are transacting these energetic exchanges, yes, but the energy they're exchanging is information. It is light of a sort. It has a purpose. It has a directionality and a usage for the energy, right? No matter what form it's taking, no matter what molecule it is or whatever kind of quote-unquote matter it is made of, it is, at the end of the day, information. And so with this sort of foundational, big picture view of information is where I want to start the ascension talk of the ascension of information here. I am going to really create maybe a workbook or visuals to go along with this at some point. But for now, for this brainstorming session, I kind of just wanted to bring forth the information, iron it out a bit, look for these distortions. I have a bit of doodles and notes of my own that I'm going to read from and look at. But accepting and understanding while listening that this is just imagination space for creative understandings, and nothing here is set in stone. Free to change and manipulate malleable information here. The ascension or evolution of information is one that follows the same exploration as all other things. So I'm not going to get too tied up into the grand scheme of ultimate purpose. I think we could recircle back around to that at the end. So, first and foremost, we have a first-person view given to us here in this playscape of reality. And information has two different obvious versions to us. There is known information and there is unknown information. And both have a whole world of working and value to us in the ways that we approach those two things and work with those two. But it's quite clear that there's a difference between things that we don't know and things that we do know, right? And if we take that one step further, is not just the first person view, but as a collective, as humanity, right? There are some things that we are capable of knowing and gaining knowledge of through exposure and direct vicinity or direct experience. And there are other things that we just cannot know for certain. We are not exposed to it. We might have heard it out there. We might have seen a projection or an offering out there in the external world, but we have never been exposed to it on our own. It's not part of our direct knowledge base. So there's a clear tierage happening, right? A step formed of this understanding of incorporating different kinds of information. And we have different words here. And this is why I really like calling it the ascension of information and bringing it back to the great spiraling ascension of shadow and light work, of the path to your higher self, the ascension of humanity through the densities, you know, because it reminds us of this sort of circling around of a topic. And what do I mean by that? Let's say we have these steps that we can look at. First being the sort of placeholder zero void space of the unknown information, the out there sort of Schrodinger's box possibility of anything and everything at all times, right? Potentiality. That we have the zero creating a space, right? The hoop that we could stand in, this little boundary of space that we're saying, okay, we're planting this intention to do this work, so here we have a placeholder for it. Let's do this. So standing on that and looking, we have our first step, information. And that is the first exposure to a thing. The very first time you see it or are introduced to it. And after you have something that you've been exposed to and you've seen it, well, it's not new anymore and you're on that first step and there's no newness left. You're out of the placeholder, you're on the first step. You've chosen to sort of, define your growth and to say, okay, I'm going to look at this one thing for now. I'm stepping away from the potentials of all others and I'm going to take my attention and intently look at this piece of information, this glitter, this little facet of potentiality that's caught my eye, this little general glimpse, an intrigue, an interest, this exposure to a thing, right? And so what's the thing? And then we get onto the first step and you explore the thing as it appears. We get a very surface level base understanding of this bit of knowledge, this point of knowledge. And that requires the observer to travel closer to the thing, right? To gain a more clear picture of it, to look more closely at it, to determine that there is more there for your imagination to seek, for your interest and intuition to look closer at the thing. And that can be driven for many different reasons. And we'll get onto that after. Let's just get through the points. Sorry, I'm going to get lost in a tangent. Reel myself in here. Step one with the information, right? And now there's no newness. You cannot gain the same point of conception, the first step of newness. You have stepped out of that phase of newness. Like I said, we're turning sort of our back on the 0 point, the playscape of all potentiality. And we're stepping into this tunnel vision, sort of gated area. So the real concept of newness can never be felt again in this particular pinpoint of information. And that is very important for us to remember in the spiritual sense of seeking enlightened alchemy, shadow work. So we'll bring that in when we circle back around to ultimate purpose. But just remember that you have struck out on a conquest, on a journey. And yes, it's a new journey. There's plenty of newness to be discovered on this journey. But you have taken the first step off of your infinite path of any potentialities of new discoveries, of new energy. And you are taking your energy and your light on this pointed path, this quest to this light source out there, to this new point of information, to the depths of that world. Because information in itself is a world all of its own, this point of information, whatever the seeking is. Maybe it's, being exposed to a really well-knitted scarf and you were inspired to learn to knit. You know what I mean? It's a world of its own. There's a whole journey to be had and learned now on this quest of learning to knit a scarf, but you can't now learn to do a sweater or socks or want to sew or learn embroidery or something like that, right? There's not really a new skill, a new quality to be learned here. You'll never get on the quest of mastering that one scarf, becoming the best knitter of the scarf that you could, if you change course now, right? If you look for newness or true new discovery right now. You have to really choose your attention, as well as perseverance to get where you want to go now. You have to really stay on that path of information that becomes a whole world of its own. And so at this first step after, we have the next step, which, like I said, this is an infinite potentiality discovery. So right now we're going to count the 1, 2, 3, the ascension of information in quick steps, 1, 2, 3. But know that just like when we count from 1, 2, 3, right? There's the potentiality of adding the decimal in there, putting as many zeros as you'd like, to do all sorts of different learning in here. But just for quick, big picture view, I'm going to just break it into sort of three major steps. Step 1 being this information, this general exposure, and the getting to know it a bit. And then as you're gaining more and more knowledge pieces on this bit of information, it becomes a knowledge base, right? And then we have the second step called knowledge, real knowledge of a thing, understanding. You have a wide space of working that you have directly been a part of, experience, and on all 3 levels of understanding, mind, body, and spirit, sort of working at this information and incorporation with multiple times of exposure, and this is sort of, I'll draw in the word enlightenment here and draw in the light parallel quickly and just say, you're gaining more light about it, more knowledge pieces. You're gaining enlightenment on this subject, on this bit of information. The information as light is changing its quality of spectrum and becoming more reflected. And not to add too much to this layering here, but remember, we are a light body like a prism of sorts. and, you know, many, many prisms stacked and moving and all working together in this sort of light show. And so remember that you're literally becoming more enlightened. The light you're bringing in, the knowledge pieces you're bringing in, are being and coming through this prism of your light shadow work, of your biases and judgments and understandings. All this sort of filter, personal opinions, is beautifully gifted to us here. This is your section of God's mosaic tile. You're looking through that one pane of window glass in this beautiful artwork of the infinite creator that is your frame, right? And so it has your own flavor. And when you receive through information, it comes through your own flavorings too. So how clean you keep this vessel determines how great you're incorporating different types of knowledge. What type of information is being collected and turned into knowledge points for you on this quest is personal. It's special to you. And the universe, infinite intelligence, courses through the ether, right? It recognizes you just like you recognize it. Nobody else can have a conversation for you with it. You speak on your own level and your own terms with it directly. We all do. And I talk a bit about this, about the spirit layer in my energetic system series, and about, you know, how we really are having these communications of all exchanges of systems at all times. And having an awareness of it, we gain a better capacity of what's happening. And through seeing what's really happening, we can make better adjustments to more positive productivity by observing these things with clarity, with honesty, with unconditional love, like I talked about at the start. Or perhaps it was last episode. I have done these episodes sort of back to back, so it could have been in episode 38 where I talked about a little bit more about personal information, our personal callings, and how we seek out things. So if that's really drawing you right now and you're interested in that, and you missed that episode, you could hop over and listen to that. I talked a little bit about that more over there. But for here, let's just understand that this stepping, this moving through information into the step of knowledge is a personal quest. And somebody else who has the same exact desire, say back to the example of knitting a scarf, you might watch the same videos, you might even like the same type of stitches or knitting pattern or whatever. But when you two do a scarf, it's going to come out different. And maybe you like different materials. Maybe you like different colors, different patterns, right? So there's always potentiality for different and personal implications and gatherings. That's what we're here to do, right? It's your journey that matters to you, and that is yours. And every moment is influenced by that. Every transaction is influenced by that. And so, yeah, as we start to get into this more knowledge area, a really deeper understanding of this thing, the picture of it is becoming more detailed, right? And with the more details is the fact that we as the observer, wanting to learn more about this, we are desiring to see more. And therefore, there becomes more to see. That's the great key in understanding and working as we step in this third, last final step, where we're having knowledge base building into wisdom. And wisdom being this sort of top tier in this example, right? But remember, this is a spiraling circle. There is no top tier, because what it is actually represents a great cycle. And it turns into newness again. If you allow it to. There's obviously trickery, there's mind manipulation and liar loops possible that we can get into later. That the shadow really runs the show. But for when we're seeking with great light, and we have a spectrum of good light within us to work, we won't get trapped in this very linear stepstone view, 1, 2, 3. We'll understand that 1, 2, 3 is only a part of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then back to the great zero and the circle around. And that every number in itself is a beautiful reflection of that same gathering, 0 to 9, turn it around back to the same again, the journey back to oneness. But that takes many trips around and around of seeing the same picture. It did for me, at least, to get to really have a comfort in knowing that that's always the same thing we're circling around. You might need to see the city and the map many, many times, many different directions to really remember, and oh yeah, this is the same map. This is the same very confusing city. I'm just seeing it from, it's been turned 147 degrees left instead of me looking at it, at the coordinates facing 0, 0 upright, regular way I'm used to seeing. But yes, so the third and this sort of growth here within knowledge to wisdom is different for everyone, and also, like I said, is highly influenced by the light and shadow work and alchemy within the being who's doing the choosing and the seeking and the incorporating. Wisdom has more depth to it, right? It's over time, years, mastery of doing it comes wisdom, right? Someone who has knitted many, many, many scarves over many years has wisdom, right? And there's just only kind of one way to get that, through direct exposure, through doing the thing, right? Through mistakes, through fixing of those mistakes, right? Through completing many, many scarves, even completing many scarves done correctly, you learn different things. You learn about how tightly or loosely you'd like to hold them and make the loops, and maybe you learn about fray at the ends, or different qualities of different types of yarn, ones that fray or ones that stay together well, or ones that are scratchy and ones that are soft. There's infinite different bits of information that make up wisdom, right? So, that is sort of the evolution of information that I really encourage everyone to explore for themselves and to test their own quality of knowing, of intelligence, and to hold yourself more in a place of humility, and not to always just seek to jump up to that wisdom state and force opinions on others, that way is the right way. Because in fact, it might have been the right way for you, but it is not the right way for all. The organic, natural world in itself shows us all great truth of how this is an exploration of manyness, right? Even if you are the most straight-jacketed, scientific, academia, white coat, approved, expert validated, Darwinian, Newtonian, geek or nerd or whatever, and you really pledge allegiance to all the propaganda, you still have to nod and give recognition to intelligent design. The laws of natural selection, whatever of those little evolutionary justifications and all those little terminologies they have to say for the whys and the hows of the adjustments, the little tweaks, the tailor fitting, this exploration of manyness that our infinite creator is set upon all of life. You cannot say that there is not a functionality of consciousness happening, a change, a morphing. That's all there is, really. And I've gotten a little bit off on a tangent, but the false sense and appearance of wisdom and this rushing to it, it really is a flagrant blasphemy in my eyes, and it's such a trigger point for me. I can't help but get detoured and start waving, my hands in the air, trying to make sure that others aren't seeing that vein and just going with it and getting trapped down there. Obviously speaking from experience, as I've said, if you are a constant listener, you'll know, I really came out of a corralled mindset in this overeducated world. So yeah, I see great value in breaking out of it and not ever getting trapped in it again. But with that said, we have this sort of 3 steps that get us from information, basic knowledge point. Then we have a working understanding, which we're going to call a knowledge. And finally, we have wisdom, which is mastery, which is this more working knowledge that becomes an ownership. And this is a double-edged word, a double-edged sword here, of ownership and of holding on to things. And this is what I'll get into, and I touched a bit on in the last one, about what we choose to hold on to, what kind of information we hold on to, and how we hold on to it. Because there's a whole other levels that they don't really want us to understand, and they're all fine and dandy to hear about information and education and knowledge points and gathering more and seeing it in this very 2D flat, or 3D flat sense of information. But we have to remember, information is energy. And because it is energetically charged, it has a charge. It holds a polarity. It lives and does work within this structure of duality that we all live within. Those laws are followed down the microcosm. And therefore, all processes, right, they function within the laws of the whole polarity. Because there's a polarity of the whole, that means all processes must reflect a polarity of sorts. They're doing an energetic handoff. Yes, they're handing off information. There's a transaction of the directions. This to do this. This piece of information is for this. And that happens in the system handoff, in the step, right? But how that worker hands off the information to the worker conscious entity on step 1 who is standing there on information, pulling that information and energy in, how they hand it off to each other matters. And they follow the atmosphere of whatever your whole system is. So if your system's filled with unconditional love, aligned with truth and quest for knowledge and incorporation, they hand it off gratefully to each other. There's going to be positive balance after the fact because they're gratefully doing their jobs. They're incorporated into the whole. They know they have value and sovereignty, and they hand that information off and incorporate it with a positive overall balance, with this fuller, more accepting spectrum of light available in the work, right? They're not shadowed while they're doing the working. They don't have little headlights on trying to see each other in the dark, hand the work over, and say thank you and keep it moving. They are in a well-lit place with beautiful music. They see each other well. They can hand it off comfortably. They're not rushed. They're not bothered, right? Conversely, they could be in a very dark place, rushed and bothered and hate their job, not seen by the creator, feeling like, they just have this one little battery with this headlight and they're forced to do this terrible push and pull work all the time. For what reason? They don't even know. This is how and why how we look at things matters. How we do the work matters. Our intention is the first and foremost foundational language that all levels, workers, bosses speak. And, it's not just inner things either. Our whole body as a whole speaks out this cymatic thumbprint, this reverberation of information out to all others while you're doing external work. We part our external systems, partnerships, communications, and exchanges. And how you hold responsibility for that matters. And, it matters on so many levels. And so when you start to realize that and you do the inner work, you can incorporate information into knowledge more clearly. And your wisdom, you'll be more wise. You won't just be sort of these foolish, intelligent people who have collected a mass of data points that were led out in front of them like a breadcrumb trail by people before them. And there's not a lot of exploration allowed with that breadcrumb trail when you're in a distinct pattern of learning and with their hierarchy. It's a forced directionality. You have to follow them from A to B. You have to go through undergrad to graduate. You have to go to master's. You've got to get a PhD. You've got to do A, B, and C. You have to have all of these publishings and studies and all of the little breadcrumbs, all these specific knowledge points along the steps must be collected. And as they're collected, they have to be stamped with the approval of the experts, of the hierarchy, of the boss, the top of where you're going, right? Because it's very externally based, especially. This isn't about information that we have within us already, that we're using to uncover and develop more, to be incorporated into us, to help us gain more light, more density, more wisdom to rise in our ascension. This is a very jammed into 3D collection of information that is supposed to be just for a purpose here on 3D. It has nothing to do with it. In fact, they'd never even want to admit that it has anything spiritual or anything to it. They might flop around in the soft science of psychology and say, likes and affinities and gifts and talents and all this kind of stuff. And you have a calling towards X, Y, and Z, or you're better at this sort of branch of science because of X, Y, and Z. But they would never say that, you're a fractal source of God who has chosen this. And all bits of that should be incorporated in your search for more wisdom in that area. You shouldn't corral yourself in your search of knowledge and information points. You should be willing to take in all information points that are sort of relative to the directionality so that you have a wide spectrum to weigh your discernment against. But what they do is they do the quote-unquote discerning for you already, have chosen the best, quickest path, and so they just encourage you to follow that. Because to them, it is just about from A to B. It isn't about a great cycle of learning and reflection and all of that, which is the double-edged sword of information and of the whole of third density and the hijacking, of ascension. And again, I'm a bit off on a tangent, but I feel like it's so important. And I said I wanted to circle around to the big picture at the end, right? So I sort of have done that without intending to. So yeah, it's important and so valuable to the soul and to your ultimate journey and quest, gathering as much as you can on your trip back to God, back to Source, that you get out of that pigeonholed, breadcrumb A to B trail, 1, 2, 3 steps, and that's it. Like it's linear, that's the word. If we tap back into where we started at, the great placeholder in the circle, 0, remember that we stepped out of that to really focus in our attention and direction at this flicker of information out there. We remember that and pull back the big picture view. It helps us to balance, right? And take that defined wisdom that we have in this one specific area, and then they say, oh yeah, that's quite valuable in there, but let me remember that that's a small slice in the pie of whole knowledge, of whole information. And let's step back and do some balancing work, and let me look at the other slices of the pie for a while and gain a little bit more experience and information over there. It's not to say that that slice of pie, that knitting the sweater isn't, or knitting a scarf, isn't important, right? But once you become a great sweater knitter and you've mastered it, there's other things to do, you know? And it's not, what I'm trying to say also is not to get caught up in the ego of it, to see it as this 1, 2, 3 steps to a trophy of wisdom, and then you step back down, and then you go do something else, you know? It's more of, it's a gradual circling. And so you're coming around at slightly an incline, and you're a little bit higher up on this path of you. And there's no stepping down or stepping up. Instead, you just sort of back to zero, back to a new quest. But you've incorporated and bring through information, wisdom, and knowledge from that section of the pie into the rest. An example of what I mean for this, right, with the scarf, and say you're a master knitter. You can't pretend that because you're a master knitter, you know all about teaching chemistry or nutrition or anything other than knitting, or things that are of that same vein, you know, maybe about things that are of likeness, thread quality, you know, different tools that's used, patterns, things that can be used directly to, say, change that scarf knowledge into knitting socks, sweaters, going from knitting to making it afghans, you know. That incorporated knowledge is on the same path, right? And we know that's direct knowledge. It can really be obvious to how you could use that wisdom in other places. But there is wisdom gained that you could take into other slices of the pie, metaphorically, you know, how to be light and hold things gracefully, how to watch how close together you're, you know, tying things up if it's too tight or looser. You know, it creates more of a different qualities of texture. And that alone is metaphoric wisdom. You can learn how to knit your life together more lovely, you know, more gracefully, with that knowledge, if you choose to incorporate it and then shine that light out as you're looking in other slices of the pie. You'll see those transfers of, oh, this is just like that in this way. Oh, I can use this balance to help with this work. You know, it will become clear to you how to use that knowledge in other places. If you're doing clear work, you can have cleaner light to shine out as you're doing other work. But if you're using this sort of really hijacked version of this 1, 2, 3 steps to a trophy, now I step off it, now I'm in my rest of my life, and how could I ever use knitting knowledge to help me with my kids, or how could I ever use that as a chemistry teacher or whatever, you know, something that seems totally unconnected. You're really shutting off your wisdom there, and you're not using it. You're not incorporating it through all of your systems. You're just sort of stuffing it into your brain and maybe into these sort of couple of spaces and saving it for later. And that's what I was trying to sort of touch on when I was talking just a few minutes ago about how we choose to incorporate and move through information really matters, to where whether we're stepping into from knowledge into wisdom, or we're just knowledge gaining more information and becoming this sort of over-educated, never really getting wise, you know, with the gathering of information, because we're really segregating it, not allowing it to be alive, not allowing it to be energy as a part of us, to being incorporated and doing work within us and having a life and speaking within us. If instead we're seeing it as just this bit of data to be stuffed into an area in the brain, like a little file cabinet to be pulled out later when needed, that's a very different vibe, right? That's very 3D, that's very restricted to have that sort of information visualization within yourself. But many of us do. And I'm speaking again from experience, you know. and to really be able to take the file cabinets out and to understand that actually those pieces of paper are alive. They're glittering bits of live energy. I shouldn't be stuffing them in a jail cell in there. I should be reading them, hearing them, speaking them, singing them, whatever it is that, integrating them. And when I see and integrate and speak on them, they become a part of me. I don't need to hold on to this false piece of paper typed up in a cabinet. I have incorporated that information into me. And when I seek it, it will be found because it's a bit of light that's meant for me. It is important to my enlightenment, to the amassing of more information for me to come to my 5D self, my more enlightened light body, this crystalline, fifth dimensional, along the path of ascension that to become of all humanity, right? And so having that more spiritual intention of information, of energy within you, and how you choose to hold on to information within yourself especially, really is what I want to get at, and why I'm offering, all these series and doing this talking, because there is such value there for each individual. And I found such for myself, unconditional exploration that is just so beneficial, so enjoyable, and unlimited. It's always there for you at every moment. When you choose to see it, when you choose that it's there, it is, But that is the weight and the level, at that wisdom level, when you can really embody that third tier up there more clearly, and you see the spiral staircase, you see the ever-present cycle that really is there, you can become aware of it more and more. There's no stepping down. There's just an accumulation of more. And that is also double-edged word and double-edged sword there, because this is how they hijack and trick you, because it's not tangible more. It's not more food. It's not more buying clothes. It's not more jewels. It's not more money. It's more love and light. It's more of the Creator. It's more conscious awareness. It is more meaning, more purpose. It's the ultimate more. It's the undistorted, untainted quest of gathering in as much as you can on your trip back to God. So that is the ascension of information, and that is also the working metaphor of gathering in more light and love. They are interchangeable. They are this beautiful, organic, harmonious, symbiotic codependency that is not negatively aligned, although they really took that word and changed it into something negative. But I don't get into that either. So I'm going to leave this podcast here for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it has been enlightening, pun intended. Thank you so much for your audience, for listening to me and my bad jokes. I appreciate your time and energy so much. Thank you for your beautiful contribution to our collective as well. I will talk to you next time.